night, Dharmlal, a minister and member of parliament, expressed disgust at Nigel Dharamlal's on the Guyanese continue to express disgust at Nigel Dharamlal's indecent assault on the person of opposition member of parliament Natasha Singh Lewis. During a sitting of the National Assembly on Wednesday, February 9th, Dharmlal, a minister and member of parliament representing the PPP, told Singh Lewis,
"You gotta get dildo. That's what you're looking for."
Several citizens have since weighed in on the assault. Here are their views.
Nigel Dharamlal lacks the mental fortitude and is unfit to sit in parliament. He is paid by the taxpayers, in case he forgot. How dare he insult the women of this country. As for Manzoor Nadir, he is at his lowest point.
I am offended by Mr. Dharamlal's statement as a lady. I am horrified and I demand an apology, no less, than from the president of this country. It is disgusting that men could stoop to this subterranean level to abuse women for no reason at all. Maybe he had nothing to say on the subject, so he had to attack ladies because he's not man enough. I am upset. I am almost ashamed to be a Guyanese. And that is the level of the parliament. How embarrassing for everybody born in this country. It is a disgrace.
I cannot believe that an installed minister of government and parliamentarian could be so disrespectful in the people's house to another female colleague in the opposition, and then he was not disciplined, but instead a motion was filed by the other minister to discipline the opposition parliamentarian that responded. What is happening in Parliament? This is so sad. A parliamentarian telling another female what they'll do? Oh my gosh.
It is my opinion that after that minister told that woman she needed a dildo, or probably she will have a dildo, I can't remember the exact word. The leader of opposition should have stood up and demanded an apology at that moment. And if no apology was forthcoming, they should have stood up, the whole opposition, and walk out of parliament. The minute you keep sitting there, that means you accept that statement. It might not sound like that, but they should have stood up and walked out of parliament and do not return to parliament until there is an official apology.
And part of what is happening in our honorable house, as they call it, with the honorable ministers. But I'm going to say this. A little thing that I wrote this morning. The woman in hijab. You wear your scarf while filthy words are spilled to smear your worth. Keep your head up high. Utterance of shameless men are now praised by foes, and shelters among the highest in the land. Our honorable house stands without a roof, no shelter for those with dispute. So-called honorable men stand without dignity, their tongues like rotten flesh. Brave woman with the pride of hijab, it has become your daily work. Stand up for your right. Without an hijab, I stand with you in your plight. Stand up, real men for right.
What you have to understand, that the PPP has no respect for no one. They don't have respect for children. They don't have respect for no one. So it's not surprising what the MP said telling one of the opposition MP that she needs a dildo. And the system is so slack in Guyana. If it was over in the States or any other country, he would have been sued for his words. But like I said, we have to blame ourselves. We have to blame ourselves for a lot of things that is happening presently in Guyana. But I'm not surprised. This present government and the MPs that are in power have no respect. They don't even have respect for themselves. So how they could have respect for others if they don't have respect for themselves? They say things as they feel like. They do things as they feel like without any repercussions. So I'm not surprised that he made such statement in the parliament. We all should not be surprised with the level of lawlessness and vulgarity.
It is so embarrassing to see a minister is telling a female that she need a dildo. He's too disrespectful, and guys need to stand up this time.
Never joke, never joke, never joke. Oh, money, never money, never money, money, never money, money. Now know what you can even money, money, never money, never money, money, never money, money. You can keep, you can even money. When you've been a corrupt, in a bill tell me money. Now because your money done, you come with conniving money. When you had your pocket full, in a bill tell me money. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me money. Yes, money, never money, never money, money, never money, money. Now know what you conniving money. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. That's all the money that me walk for. A £2 note and a guilder piece. A £2 note and a guilder piece. A £2 note and a guilder piece. This is all the money that me walk for. I said money, neighbor, money, neighbor, money, money, neighbor, money, money. Now I don't want you conniving money. Oh, Joseph.
we stand and leave us by the wayside eventually. Good morning again. It is 7:26 hours. I have no intentions of standing between you and the Honorable Doctor for much longer. Right? I've made him wait for quite a while. Not that I wanted to, but the discussion behind the news was important enough to be allowed up to a certain point. And so here we are. Dr. Hines, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to
good
another
morning
program.
too. Thank you.
I explained to your viewers yesterday, or our viewers yesterday, that you were unable to come yesterday because of your teaching schedule and the fact we might be changing your appearances from Tuesdays to Wednesday.
Yes, Wednesday is a little bit more convenient. As you know, I'm 3 hours behind, where I am now is 3 hours behind Guyana. So it's in what they call 4-day morning here. And after that, I have a full day on Tuesdays. Wednesdays are light today, so I can manage the 4-day morning better on Wednesdays. Getting old now, you know.
And in case I don't say it enough, let me say thank you for the sacrifices you make. Because
thanks.
I can tell you losing sleep is a big sacrifice.
Yeah.
Let me take a short break here to inform you and share condolences. I am informed that the mother of former Minister of Finance, Winston Jordan, died last night sometime. She was 82 years old. And so, Brother Winston, I know you might be listening, and so we share our condolences with you, and we certainly will keep you in our prayers. Yourself and the family, please accept from the KAMS family our sincere condolences. I know you have had your own challenges. It has been a challenging last few months to you, and this coming now certainly will add to your challenge. But I trust that you will find the strength to hold on and move on. I can tell you that losing a mother, regardless of what age, is not an easy thing. I lost my mother, about 2 years ago at the age of 83. And I can't get past that moment. Every time somebody that is close dies, it reopens the whole can of worms. So I know I can understand what you're experiencing, Winston. And so be strong, and we trust that all will be well with the family. All right, so here we are. Dr. Hines, a lot has happened since you were here the last time. Up until now, still in the headlines is Sue Gate. Last time we were asking who the hell is Sue, and the frontal approach of this issue taken to this issue by the vice president, former president and vice president, and even the current installed president, the fat guy, trying to discredit the reporter, saying that she has special interests, etc., etc. I, over the weekend, and I've come across a lot of different bits and pieces of people piecing the news together and so on, and many are arguing that Sue has been around long. He has investments all around the world, and he is, let me say allegedly, Jack Doe's middleman, using Jack Doe's money or ill-gotten funds to legitimize it through investments around the world. That issue is not going anywhere right now. What is your most recent hearings on these issues, and where are you at on this Sue Gate matter?
Thanks. Let me join in Also sending my condolences out to Brother Winston and the passing of his mother. We're all at that age now, and I suppose Winston and I are about the same age. My mother just turned 82. You know, our parents, if they're not gone yet, we have to live in that reality, you know, and this is a season of death, you know. Since the COVID came on the scene, it has really increased the incidence of death all around us, and you know, every single day. So I just want to give Vincent my condolences and to say that these are moments that are extremely difficult to deal with, and you need all the strength and the fortitude to press on when close ones go. Yes, last week when we dealt with Sue, it was just the morning after. The story had broken the night before, and I had made some preliminary comments on the issue. And I'm glad that a lot of my preliminary observations, if not all of them, have been right on spot. I'm a political person, so I am not necessarily going to spend time on the alleged corruption, but I'm more interested in what these allegations of corruption tell us about the governance of our country, because the people against whom these allegations are leveled are people who are governing our country. And I am interested in the implications for governance. As I said last week, and I've said on other shows, I don't think that Sugate is going to bring down the government. I also don't believe that it is going to have a great impact on people's electoral choices. But the significance of this, I think, harkens back to what happened during the elections impasse in 2020. And I'm repeating what I've always repeated since then. And that is that the outcome of those elections have had consequences. And while one cannot necessarily say that every political development since then has a causal relationship to what happened in those elections, one can safely say, I think, that a lot of the big developments have their genesis, or has their genesis in what happened during those 5 months and around those elections. I preface my comments again by saying what happened in 2020 was regime change that involved local forces in conjunction with regional and international forces. And that the regime change had to do with a perception among those who wanted a change in a particular direction, that it was in their best interest to have one party in power as opposed to the other party. And there are myriad reasons I think one can offer why that choice was made. But having made that choice, I suppose one has to live with the consequences. Many of us were asked to make critical choices. A lot of us who were in public office and in public life had to make a critical choice at that juncture. What happened during 2020 was that all the contradictions in Guyanese society, all the contradictions in Guyanese politics came together, converged during those 5 months. And it was a critical period. And the central question was what position you were going to take if you were a public person. You had to live with those positions. I think a lot of people saw regime change and they knew it was regime change and went along with it. Some people did not realize it was regime change, but they went along with the rhetoric and the narrative. And the narrative was simple. Here was an election, a quote-unquote democratic election, and one party or one side, one political actor was trying to hold on to power by seeking to manipulate the election. And that narrative, I think, is always an easy narrative when it comes to countries like Guyana. It allows us to make quick decisions and not spend time thinking about the complexity of what we were dealing with. I think some of us, and certainly I include myself there, recognize that we were entering into a new era, that as we became an oil-rich nation, that Guyana was going to change fundamentally. Others had begun to talk about the Dutch disease and all the other economic ramifications about a newly oil-rich country. And those were, of course, valid considerations. But those of us who were trained as political commentators and political scientists were also thinking about the political ramifications of what was going to happen. And here you were having an election, the first election in an era of oil. What oil does is that it opens up the potential for tremendous amount of monies being at the disposal of the rulers, monies that they never had at their disposal before. That's one. Two, what it meant is that given our geographical location, the finding of that amount of oil simply brought us squarely into the sphere of geopolitics. We are sitting geographically next door to Venezuela, which is the hotspot, not just for hotspot for regime change because of the oil reserves in Venezuela and the fact that the Venezuelan rulers were trying to take the country in a direction that was not comfortable to the big brother in the north. And here is it. Guyana is now finding oil. Trinidad is around the corner with a lot of gas, natural gas reserves, and one of the, if not the highest exporter of natural gas to the big brother in the north. So the big brother in the north has to have an interest, oil in Guyana, oil in Venezuela, oil in Trinidad, oil in Suriname, right? And so we are, with one fell swoop, in the middle of geopolitics. And geopolitics is not just about the United States to the north, it is also about the other superpowers. China, it's about Russia, And so therefore, we have become the change environment without us really knowing. I mean, when you're a small society, you are accustomed to the smallness of your issues. You know, we have our ethnic issues, and we've been dealing with that. We have our little governments who have been behaving badly, and we're dealing with that, and so on. We are not always very quick to understand the linkage between what we deal with internally and what is happening in the world around us. In fact, I think one of the weaknesses of Guyanese politics is that we often are not aware of the world around us. We're not even aware of the Caribbean around us. I mean, you ask the average Guyanese, what's happening in St. Kitts? What's happening in St. Lucia? They don't know. First of all, you know, even with the media, we don't pay attention to the news in the region and in the hemisphere. What's happening in Bolivia? What's happening in Peru? When I was a boy, you had BBC News because we were still a colony and a colony, and BBC because England was an empire. We got Empire News, so there was a way in which you turn on your radio and you would know what's happening in Africa because England had colonies there. You knew what was happening in the rest of the Caribbean. You knew what was happening in Asia because it was, you were getting the news of the empire. As we move further away from that, we became caught in our own little world, and therefore we'll be not aware. So Guyana was changing before our very eyes, politically, and we did not know. Even the politicians who were in power, these are people who were in power, and we've heard Winston Gordon on this program, were not aware of what was happening around them. I mean, the government was taken by surprise when Sharon Das voted against his own government. And one remembers the chief whip said, bring it on. And I remember saying to myself, what is this lady talking about? Is she aware of the enormity of this no confidence vote? And it was clear that they were. And I'm saying, you know, it's a weakness of small country politics that our smallness becomes our world and we don't know. And so therefore, we went into an election which was a decisive election. Some of us use the term, it was the mother of all elections, but you know, people didn't pay too much of attention. They heard the term, but they didn't pay too much of attention to the enormity of the situation that faced us geopolitically. Now, when you add the geopolitics to our own internal politics, our ethnic problem, it is being so ingrained historically, it meant that the situation had moved to another level and we didn't understand it. And so, you know, you ask the average person about regime change and they're thinking about a military coup because, you know, that's how a lot of regime changes take place in the world, through military coups or through military invasion by a big country. You know, a big country goes in to Libya and, you know, effects regime change. You could go into Syria, you try to effect regime change. So we are more attuned to that. But an election as a medium of regime change, we are not too au fait with that. In our English-speaking Caribbean, that happened the last time was in Jamaica in 1980, when because of Michael Manley's democratic socialism, his friendship with Cuba, the Americans threatened him not to go there, and he was defiant that, you know, he was going to stand with Fidel Castro in third world solidarity, that he was going to try to ensure that the revenues from bauxite that 7-8% of it is left in Jamaica and so forth. And he thumbed his nose at the Americans. And Henry Kissinger, the Secretary of State, went down there and summoned Manley to meet him at the hotel. Manley said, "I'm Prime Minister. You come to in my country to meet me." And Kissinger went to Manley and delivered the message from the American government. And Manley tell him where to get off. And for the next 4 years, American reduced aid by 200 to 300%. They encouraged the people with money, the middle class, to leave in droves. And Manley was saying, have 13 flights to Miami. You all can go. And they left and took their money with them to Miami. Guns were imported into Jamaica. And for 4 years, from 1976 to 1980, Jamaica became ungovernable. And the Jamaica Labour Party, which was pro-American, was there feeling that kind of thing. Coming to the 1980 election, 800 people were killed in a small society of 2.5 million people at that time. Jamaica had. And 800 people were killed around that election. There was no way that Manley could have won that election. So an election could be used. You can manipulate the election to ensure that one party loses. There's no way Manley could have lost that election. Manley knew, he realized that he was being pushed out of power, and he chose to go. He didn't fight back. He went. Once the results were announced, he didn't contest them. In Guyana, because our rulers did not realize what was happening until Sharon Das did that thing, that's when they began to fight back. And it was too late. So when the election results came and they realized then that regime change was taking place, they decided, well, we're going to contest this thing. And it was that stretched it out for 5 months, right? Now, I remember being on Mark Benchup's show with a lobbyist that the coalition was paying. And I remember saying, this is regime change, because I suspected, and I went quickly and started to read up on regime change. And I remember saying, this is regime change. And the lobbyists that the coalition is paying is arguing with me on Mark Benchup's show. I think Mark himself wasn't convinced it was regime change. And they were basically telling me I was foolish. The next day, Moses Nagamutu informed that the government knew they were in the middle of regime. The rest is history, right? The Americans intervened. They put sanctions on one set of leaders. The matters got into the court. Unexpectedly, there was a recount. The recount threw up evidence that the results that they were considering that came out of the box were not the real results. And the court, using a very narrow measurement, decided they are going to support an election results based on what was in the box. Now you open the box to verify that what was in the box was legitimately there. When you learn that a lot of what was in the box wasn't legitimate, you then define an election results narrowly to what's in the box. And you say, if there are anomalies in the box, that's not our business. That's not GCOM's business. That's not the court business. You take it to a petition, right? And And when there was some resistance on the part of the coalition, like I said, the Secretary of State, I'm taking you back to Jamaica, 1980. Henry Kissinger, the Secretary of State, went down to Jamaica to deliver the message to Michael Manley and to say, if you don't, we are going to push you out. Who was calling the coalition leaders and threatening them and eventually putting sanctions on it? Is Secretary of State. The power of the greatest country in the world was brought to bear to effect and influence the result of an election in a small country that up to that time was the second poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. If the Secretary of State of a powerful country, the most powerful country in the world, is threatening the leaders and getting involved in the elections of a small, poor country, it tells you there is more in the market. Let me take you back, yours back a little further. In 1953, when the British intervened in Guyana after an election, they didn't influence the election. Regime change didn't take place at the election in 53. It took place shortly after the election. And when I did the research on my doctoral dissertation and went into the US archives, I found the papers, I have them up to this day, where there was a message from the US Secretary of State to his counterpart in England, urging them to take action in Guyana because of the fear that Guyana was going to become a communist country, communist region, as they use it. This is 1953, the Secretary of State again, urging his British counterpart to intervene in your colony because this colony is likely to become a communist country. The British sent in troops, suspend the constitution, overthrew the government, jailed the leaders, regime change again. Regime change. So, given all of that to say, that if you don't pay attention to the world around you, you end up being in the position that we were in 2020. So, regime change, the Secretary of State, Mr. Pompeo, threatening eventually sanctions. Mr. Granger gave in. Shortly afterwards, a couple weeks afterwards, who comes to Guyana? The very Secretary of State. He signs agreements. He announced the agreements. The Guyana government didn't announce what happened to this day. We don't know about some of the things. One of the things in there was what is called the Shipwrighter Agreement. And the Shipwrighter Agreement, which allows the United States to come in to Guyana's territorial waters, ostensibly to look for drugs. When that Shipwrighter Agreement was signed in the 1990s with the other Caribbean countries, Guyana was not part of it because geopolitically, we were not out there in the Caribbean Sea and so on, but we were out of it. But now, we are part of the Shipwriters Agreement, which gives the U.S. the power to come into our territory. We do not know, we the ordinary citizens, do not know whether we have foreign troops on our soil or not. The suspicion is that we do, right? Exxon, which is an American company, is never going to be so involved in a country economically, the investment that we made in Guyana, without the support of the American state. The way the American system works, the military industrial complex, as White Eisenhower a Republican president, as he was leaving office in 1960, he warned the American people about the military-industrial complex. And what's a military-industrial complex? Is the way in which the economics of America is supported by its military. That the role of the military and the role of the government, the state in America, is to support its companies abroad. And so once Exxon comes to Guyana, the American military and the American state is going to ensure that that investment by Exxon is protected. And among other things is that you have to have the kind of government in place that is going to protect interests of Exxon and other big companies. That's how the military-industrial complex operates. We in Little Guyana had no idea. We thought, well, you know, the PNC and PPP, APNU and PPP fighting all this election. We had little idea of what else was riding on it. And suddenly, the OS gets involved, the Commonwealth gets involved, CARICOM gets involved, USAID got involved, and the old world is coming down on Guyana. The old world is coming, and we did not have an idea of the enormity of what we were dealing with. And so finally, when Mr. Granger decided it was too much, and he threw in the towel, the government was quickly installed within minutes, within hours. Our finale was sworn in, installed, and as we say, the rest is history. But the rest of what has happened since then must be seen within the context of what happened within those 5 years. There were critical decisions that were made there. And I think the coalition, because it did not understand the enormity of what it was in, it probably made some fatal errors. And one fatal error was not to demand, as the sitting government, I think Hamilton Green had a sense of what was happening, and he made a statement which, of course, was used against him. But if the coalition government had a sense of what was happening, it would have gone to the table. That is, if the advice that I would have given is to, okay, you now realize this thing is being taken away from you, right? It's not about whether you lost the election or won the election. Don't even worry that argument anymore. Because whether you win the election or lose the election, you're going to be thrown out of office, right? So this is not about whether you win or lose the election. Winning and losing the election is really just a mask for throwing you out. This is no longer about whether you won or lose. Tell your supporters that the election has become more than an election. It has become regime. And given what is at stake, tell your supporters they have to defend their share of Guyana and put them on the streets and say to the PPP, the Americans and the others, we realize that you have turned this election into regime change. And given the history of our country, we cannot hand over all the wealth that is coming to this country and the management of it to one group. Because if we do that, if we hand over to your democratic choice, we are handing over the control of national resources to one ethnic group. We are handing over control of our resources to one small clique of rich people whose intent is to accumulate all the wealth of the country into the hands of a small group and then trickle it down to their supporters. And we cannot do that because we are representing that segment of the people that slaved for Guyana for 200 years, 200 years, and another 150 years of colonialism. And now this patronage is coming. We cannot hand it over. And so therefore, we are asking for our share of the management of these resources. Vincent Alexander and David Hines, this David Hines, we smelled what was happening. And we argued that, look, these elections are conclusive, inconclusive. We were supported by what Mr. Lowenfield said. Mr. Lowenfield put the numbers on the table. He said, here are the clean numbers, here are the dirty numbers. Because of the amount of dirty numbers, meaning the dirty votes that were potentially contaminated, I cannot declare this a win of these elections. Alexander Hines then said, why don't we have a joint government? Why don't we have an interim government? And let both parties govern the country. I said, govern it in an interim way for 3 years. And then sort out all our problems and then decide what we'll do for them. And I remember Jack Dio saying, no. When I wrote that and came out with that, Jack Dio said, no, we will talk when you declare us the winner. And I'm saying that if Granger and the coalition had supported or adopted what Vincent and I said, we would have been in a different place today. I didn't know everything. In fact, I didn't know anything about what was going on in terms of regime change. I didn't know. I had no access to power. Nobody was telling I belonged to the WPA. We were never told. We were never called to a meeting to be told this is what is happening. You know, Nagamutu says regime change, and I heard that in the media. But because of my training and because of my study of Guyanese politics, I realized you cannot give this entire thing away. And now you have to come off that election, whether you win or lose an election, and you have to look down the road. And the most you can ask for is your share. And you do that by citing history and come to the table. And we didn't do that. And regime change was effective. And the new government was put in place. Now, a few months later, the Americans in their State Department report said the government was installed. That's why we are using the word install now. Now, this was the Americans who said it. A few days ago, the USAID, which is an arm of the State Department, I found a statement by the USAID calling on Granger to give up power. Last night I went back and did some research and I found the report in the Kaitor News and Starbuck News where USAID called on Granger to give up power. In July, after the recount, the day after the recount, all of them issued a statement. The USAID, in a report that they did last year and made public last week, the USAID now says that the election is not a done deal. It's not a done deal. They said that the 2020 election was not a done deal, it's a contested deal. And as a result of that, the country is not a functional country. Guyana is not a functional democracy as a result of that inconclusive election. And they said the parliament has become a joke. You cannot hope to effect any change through the parliament. And they listed all the things that the government has done since then. And they've concluded that going forward, the management of Guyana's oil should be by both political parties in what they call a power-sharing government. I know some of you all on this program, some black people so stupidly just be saying power-sharing can't work. In effect, what you're saying, you don't want a share of Guyana's oil. You like the PPP, you want all for yourself. And since you want all for yourself, you have to live with the fact that the PPP get all for themselves. At the end of the day, we have to share Guyana's wealth. And what the Americans who throw the coalition out saying that the way now to share that wealth is both parties must be in government managing that wealth. They're not saying to be in some committee, in government. Because that's where the power lies. You split the ministries, you split the presidency down the middle. And they say that is the best way to govern. Now that's what David Hines said during the 5 months. That's what Vincent Alexander said during the 5 months. The Americans, of course, didn't pay attention to us because they wanted regime change. But what has happened in America is that shortly after regime change in Guyana, they had their own regime change in America. Because what the election of Trump had really brought about regime change in America. And so the ousting of Trump was in effect a form of regime change in America. Now the way America works is that they're not going to come after a change in government and say, oh, the previous government supported regime change in Guyana, we're going to change that. That's not how international relations. But the very institution, the very Department of State, the very USAID is now going to sound a different one. The USAID, which called on Granger under Trump to leave office because the election was a democratic election that was won, is today saying, under Biden, is saying that Guyana is not a functional democracy, that the elections of 2020 were inconclusive and contested, and in any case, going forward, the governance of our oil belt has to be done by the major parties representing the major ethnic groups. Now, that report came out, was compiled since last year, August. It comes out 2 days after Mr. Sue. You all were wanting to say, well, Kidaki asked you about Mr. Sue, why are you giving us all that history? Right? That report comes out 2 days after Mr. Sue. Mr. Sue and that president of that year, first of all, that Vice News didn't come here as a little news agency come to do a little story. Wherever America is, wherever American economic interest is, the might of America is behind it. The military, the state, but also American civil society. Jimmy Carter goes around the world. When he used to, he's an old man, now he doesn't do it. When he would come to Guyana and so on, he's not representing the American government formally, but he has the power of the American government. When you see that journalist, when you do the research, you see That journalist was embedded with the American military, she's been all over the world doing reports and so on. You know that's not an ordinary journalist. You see she's wrong with Jack Dio there? I am certain she had she bodyguard. She's coming to Guyana with the full support of the CIA and all the other American agencies. Jack Dio knew that he was going to sit down not with an ordinary journalist. He's a pompous man. If any ordinary journalist had gone to interview, he'll tell them, I'm not taking you, go to it. He had to sit down for that. The problem is that just like the coalition, the PPP got careless. They were put in power as a result of regime change. And they thought, well, now we're in power, we give the Americans what they want, they can flare out there, we're not going to change the contract, they can do what they want in Guyana. And so we are left alone to do what we want in Guyana. Or so they thought, right? So they thought. So they dropped their guards. And wherever American economic power is, America, like I say, military power is behind it, American intelligence is behind it, American media are here, and they've been sniffing around and picking up as much as they could. And so when they called Jack Dio to that interview, they called him to shame him to the rest of the world. Because basically, what the PPP has been doing is thumbing their nose at the Americans and saying, we give you all what you are and leave, stay out of our business in Guyana. They've been playing ball with the Chinese and perhaps the Russians, not taking into consideration that America is at war with China, an economic war. And it's the Americans who put you in power. And you are playing ball with their opponent. We put you in power, you get too big for your shoes. And so they devised a means of undermining the people. Mr. The Sugate is about undermining the people. It's not about removing them from government. It's about undermining them. You all remember that term? From a certain activist that got Jack Dio and them crazy. The Americans have decided to undermine them. And they brought him to that thing. And that lady laid upon him. And then when she called Mr. Sue name, he almost peeled skin because he did not realize the extent to which he was being to which he and his government were being undermined, because they took the Americans for granted. God put me in power and we give you can do what you want and so on. We don't answer to nobody. Again, it's a naivety. The coalition was naive in its own way. The PPP has been naive in a different way. And so the significance of that, Mr. Sufi, is now Mr. Jack Dio is not suspected. Basically, they don't even have to put out no report to the world. They have already unclothed that man. And in unclothing him, they've unclothed his government. And people are saying, well, let's wait for the report and so on, as if there is something to prove. Nobody is setting out here to prove whether Mr. Jack Dio is corrupt or the PPP government. We know. We don't need Mr. So to tell we the PPP is corrupt. We Guyanese know that. So we don't have to wait for no report to come out. All that performance, because that interview with Mr. Jack Dio was a performance. The Americans set up that performance. And that performance was to lay him naked. He now has to lay off the Chinese. Because the Americans are not concerned about us. They are concerned about the Chinese. And they got Mr. Su to tell them how the PPP play ball. Mr. Su name was mistakenly called. And journalists don't reveal their source like that. As Henry Jeffrey said last night, when you see a journalist reveal the source, it's because the source gives them the permission to reveal it. The source can say anything afterwards. All right? We are dealing in the big league here, you know. In the big league. And so the job, the Americans have done their job. The PPP will now have to lay off the Chinese, right? Because that's what the U.S. wants. The U.S. wants Guyanese wealth for the U.S. and for the West. And they don't want China and Russia to get any play. And the PPP was feeling that they're big, you know, we're in power, and we can do what we want, and so on and so forth, all right? And the Americans have publicly rebuked them. And I'm saying this is not for us, kind. They're not helping the coalition. They're not helping us in the opposition. They're helping themselves. And then 2 years later, they leaked this USA report that said, you were put in power. You didn't win no election. You have governed undemocratically. You're not no democratic government, right? You will now have to share power from our standpoint. That you cannot govern this thing. We thought you could. Or those who were in power in America before made a deal with you and thought you could. But we changed our mind. People will ask you, well, how the Americans put them and now the Americans are criticized. No, Americans just changed their mind. Americans make it clear we do not have permanent friends, we have permanent interests. Permanent interests. And the United States, the PPP didn't realize that. No, let me give you all a little bit more. You all may forget. A few months ago, probably a year ago, Donald Ramotar, I think it was in October, speaking at the Red House, warned the PPP that now you are in power, you can be put out of power by the forces. And I remember taking Donald to task and saying, Donald, you talk about regime change in '64, but you didn't talk about regime change in 2020. But you're warning the PPP that they can become victims of regime change. Donald was on to something he knew. He knew. Once you get into this big game, he warned them. Warned them. When Jacques Dior was get skin up, what did he say? I have become a victim of the war between the United States and China. He knew right away what happened. He's not a damn fool. And they're saying, he and Irfan are saying, the woman came with an agenda. Yes, she came with an agenda. What they're basically saying is that the agenda that she came with works against them. But you all don't get into that nonsense that the woman didn't come with an agenda. She came with an agenda. And the agenda is to skin them up. Now, what does that have to do with us in Guyana? We in Guyana, those of us who call ourselves leaders, we have been given an opening here. Like I said, Vincent and I called for power sharing. The coalition didn't support us. Had they called for power sharing, they might have been in a power sharing government right now. Because the Americans are showing their open power sharing. But, they didn't. The Americans are now saying that the PPP should not be in office by itself. But the Americans are not going to throw the PPP out of government. It is now up to the opposition. to decide how you're going forward. You want to leave the PPP there and let them do what they're doing with all this money you're hearing about how much 1,000 barrels and so on. You want
This
to
kind of comment has
reduce
come
your
up a
life
lot
to an
in my video
election
on
alone, where all we're thinking about is fighting another election. and the PPP now know the art of manipulating election. Or you want to talk about election within the context of sharing the patrimony of the country. See, you all Guyanese sometimes get caught up in political forms. Elections can be manipulated. Nobody wins an election. Or all elections all over the world. Look, Barbados had an election. You all may say, oh, it's a democratic election. Yes, it's a democratic form only. Form. What the Prime Minister did is look at COVID, look at the opposition, and say the combination of COVID and the fact that the opposition hasn't been able to do any kind of work. I have the power to call an election 2 years in advance. Call it 2 years in advance. 30% of the people come out and vote. The majority of them vote for me. I win an election. Oh, democracy. What democracy? Elections in any country are manipulated. I'm not saying that elections are not necessary. But there are times when you cannot put the solution on the election because it can be manipulated. It wasn't 2020. You have to engage in democratic forms, but you also have to engage in democratic substance. There are oil riches. When the elections are over, win, lose, and draw, these black people whose foreparents sweat, bled, and died for this country, when the elections are over, win, lose, or draw, they want the people that they vote for at the table governing. We have to link form to substance. Elections can be manipulated. We see it easy. We can put a voters list. How we don't get a new voters list? The law said that we can't take registered. We have to get the PPP to come to the table to agree to a voters list. You're not going to get a strong PPP to come to the table. Agree to a device that will make you win. It's only a weak PPP will come to the table. The Americans are weakening the PPP for them. How are we going to weaken the PPP to benefit us? Will the PPP agree to something that will benefit us? No. The PPP has power in its hands? Yes. Is the Americans going to throw the PPP out of power? No. Even the regime change that the Americans did in 2020, the PPP had to do the lifting. The PPP raised money. They had the people planted overseas. They had the people planted in the APNU, AFC. They had the people planted in CARICOM. They had to do the heavy lifting. The Americans cleared the way for them, but they had to do the heavy lifting. Over to us. And I'm telling you all, there is nowhere in the world, that you win power and hold power without the brains of your country. Condoleezza Rice, bright like a sin. She left Stanford and she go and work for your country. You put your brain to help the Republicans. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger was one of the brightest men of his generation. You have to have ideas. You don't win with rah, 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 rah. Orphan and you and them may not have the brains, but they accumulated enough money from what they thief when they were in government and what they give to their friends, that money was used to buy brains for them. And those brains worked out how to bring them into power. One of the problems with our black party is that we get you all, what David Rudder said, Caribbean people, yak, 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 that is the root of our problem. They get you all, it's not what they bring to the table. They bring anything to the table. Huh? 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 Some parties are able to mobilize votes. Some parties and groups are able to mobilize ideas to get the vote. And until we in the opposition get off this nonsense of fighting each other and who is bringing this to the table, we're always going to be in the problems we are. We can't do nothing. We can't even get a couple of people on the streets. You would think that by now, the PNC, AFC, WPA, some of the trade unions who are friendly to us, all of you would have been sitting down somewhere in secret, working out strategy, how we going to deal with this thing. I can tell you, it ain't happening, and I'm here. Because we don't work so. And partly because we don't work so is because all you don't force us to work so. Because all you repeat, ta, 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 ta. Because you all think, some of you all, not all, I think the majority of us do, but we still have some people who believe that in this little school by politics, and not realizing that we are in the big league. I spent all this time this morning going through all of this to make one big point. That is our politics and no longer school by politics. Big boy politics. We lost, we get pushed out because we play school by politics. When the other side was playing big boy politics. Big short pants and then long pants. And we still have not learned. We think we vote Aubrey Norton into being the leader and all problems will be solved. First of all, we don't even understand what's going on in Bionka. We vote him as leader and they might not be the full leader yet. We're always looking for quick fixes. Quick fixes, you know? And we cussing Aubrey already, oh God, he said he's gonna do this and he ain't doing it. We got to change our attitude. Leaders have to change the attitude, but all you, the followers also have to change your attitude. Do not look for quick fixes. There are no quick fixes in this thing. We are fighting here a battle that we have fought since the Middle Passage. We are at war. The poor is at war against the rich. Cold war, not a hot war. Africans and Amerindians are at war with East Indians and Cold War. Our country is at war with itself. And the outcome of that war has to be an outcome that brings all of us to the table. I hear some of you, oh, that time's power sharing work. How the hell do you know that you ever work it? You ever work it? I get so tired of black people sometimes being stupid, working against your own interests. You sit them outside and complaining, Jack, you do this, Jack, you do that. Look what the PPP doing. They're doing it because they have power. And people are telling you, you gotta go there and share power, and you're saying it can't work. Dick Greg used to say, what kind of fool is you? I'm gonna get with the program and tell you all leaders that they want you all share. That you all want you all share. The Americans who throw you all out of power now come in and tell you all how to get back power. And you all saying it can't work. I saw that yesterday, some damn fools writing that power sharing will never work. The hell you ever work it? Kinaki, good morning.
Oh, I'm still here. Good morning. It would seem that I was absent, but I was right here. You know, sometimes you have to give the professor space, because at the end of the day, the professor is just that, the professor. He's here to teach and share with us. Indeed, the USAID, I see people are asking for us to post the link of the USAID report. That's the DRG 2021 report, right?
Yes,
Right. So you can go look for it, DRG 2021. As a matter of fact, all right, let me see if I can post it, because what I generally explain is while I'm doing this live program, I usually am not on the Facebook Live. I'm doing it through a software.
Oh, okay.
And so while I see some of the comments, I don't get to comment. And that's a nice thing for me. So I keep out. Right? I remain, what should I say, bipartisan. Yes, but it's a DRG 2021, and it has really analyzed what has happened in this country. And it has also pointed out the weaknesses of what we have as a country. And so it's not just enough for you to just listen to what Dr. Hines is saying or what others are saying. But indeed, if you get the opportunity to read the report, it will be such a good thing. Right? It would be such a good thing. I don't know who's calling this hour in the morning. Y'all don't call me now. But yes, that question on Sue Gate, you've really used that singular question to analyze in totality what we're dealing with. Lots of people are thinking that Jack Deere is about to lose his life or lose his power because of what is happening. But I constantly refer to Manuel Noriega and how the U.S. dealt with him. Because they simply squeeze you bit by bit, by bit, by bit, by bit. And that is what I'm looking forward to. That is where my joy will come. To see Jackie and the PPP get squeezed bit by bit by bit. Right? As a matter of fact, I can't recall who said it to me, but somebody said they would like to see the PPP in power for another year.
Yeah, I told you that last night when we were talking.
Because then you will really see how they will disintegrate. Right?
I want to go beyond the year. Give them one more year and skin them up for the next year.
Yes.
But we have to use that year to prepare ourselves when they're totally naked. What to do. So it's two-way. You know, sometimes we feel we have to do this thing quick. Look, right. You know, after they throw me out in 2020, and in the few months after, our leaders didn't do anything, one had to resign oneself for the long haul. Now we got to come here every day and give you all strength that this thing will change. But we know that be in this for the long haul. How long, as Dr. King asked, you know, how long? Not long. But being this for the long haul, we have to be honest with you all. The government is not going to change tomorrow. Even if, and look, there is the elections petition. It's very important. I do not think the election petition will throw the government out. What the election petition will do is what Mr. Sue is doing, the USAID is doing. It is give them up to the public how they rig the election. want to win too quick. But Marley said what? The struggle is sweeter than the victory. I won the elections petition, not for me to win the election petition and go back for next election and hope to win and all that nonsense. I won elections to spin them up and show where the rig, so all you gonna know, and so we will stop them from ever doing that again. Elections are important, but in this scenario, we cannot put all our faith in an election, because if we do that, 5,000 votes can come in between us and power. And what Americans are saying in that USAID report is that even if you lose an election by 1 seat or 2 seats, you deserve a place at the table. That's a seat or two.
I wanted to ask you, now with this report and its conclusions, its recommendations, is it a time for the opposition to step up the ante?
Of course, Kidaki. Of course. Of course. You know, I've been accused on this program, sometimes justifiably, sometimes unjustifiably, of shielding the opposition. You know? And suppose, but the opposition can't be shielded for much longer. We have to have our act together. We are all over the place. I am in this corner, me and you. The AFC in their corner. You know, the AFC say the PNC, like they don't want to put up somebody in the NRF, both we are prepared. So, you know, we chatting with one another. You know, I mean, the opposition, and we chatting. We need a leader who's going to bring all of us together on the table and say, we have differences. We have all problems with one another. But do we agree that we want this country to be taken away from the singular management of the PPP? And if yes, what is the minimum? What are the minimum things we can agree on? We're not going to agree on 10 things, 15 things. What are the 5 things that AFC, WPA, PNC, whoever else can agree on? And then we have to map out a strategy. We have to have ideas. Look, power has never been had in this world anywhere without ideas.
Question.
Ideas are important. When our foreparents bought those villages, they had to have an idea, they had to imagine. Because they were slaves, enslaved. They had to imagine what a village would look like. That is why within a couple of years, out of slavery, 1838, 1839, 1 year later, 1840, they're buying villages and setting them up. Because idea. We feel that we can win a struggle without using what God has endowed us with. That is why we always get beat. Because we have become such unintellectualized people. I'm not talking about brightness. How much subject you can pass at exam. Because our foreparents didn't have that. What they have was topside. And we just throw it upside in the trench. Because we feel that's not important. All you're doing is talking. It's not the talk. It's what you talk and where the talk comes from.
Question. Are we not that leader to bring everyone together and say, let's strategize?
Most people think so.
Most people think so.
I'm not going to argue with the majority.
Question. What is preventing him from doing it now?
You already want me.
Stop. He's leader of the PNC. He is chairman of the APNU. What is stopping him?
PNC. It's an easy question.
Explain.
There's no explanation. It's playing out for us to see. The very PNC that he was elected leader undermining him.
But what?
It's not obvious.
I will argue that the people who we are claiming is holding back this process are inconsequential in this matter, quite frankly. Granger is not an executive member of the PNC. Neither is Harmon.
You're a good student. You will get plenty A's in my class. Because you're right. It is not about Granger, it's not about Harmon. It's about a political culture. It's a political culture of the PNC that is at play here. And I know PNC people won't want me to say it. It's not about those individuals. Is Granger holding back the process? And as you said, Granger ain't got no power. He doesn't have any office in the PNC. It's a political culture of the PNC and by extension of black people.
So
it's a political culture. We are too petty in our political culture. It's a petty political culture that is at play. It's not individuals, you're right. Brother David is a good man. I can tell you that. I got my problems with him. But he's a good man. Brother Harmon is a good man. Human beings are by our very nature good. But when armed with power,
yes, you see,
of these former colonial outposts is that we have not yet learned how to govern power. All of us.
I am sometimes left at a loss when I come to this point and this junction in the road, if I can call it that, because here we have a newly elected CEC and other administrative bodies of the PNC, dominated by pro-Norton people, and Norton seems not to be able to get anything done.
Hey, brother, there is a difference between political form. What you are talking about is political form. Form, F-O-R-M. There's a difference between political form and political substance. The form has to be linked to substance for you to get the necessary change. Norton wins, he has the whole executive, and so on. That is political form. Political substance is how you use that majority to bring about justice. And that is where we have always failed in the Caribbean. To translate formal power into substantive power. And it's political culture and political will. That's what it is.
All right,
you have to have an appreciation of what you're up against.
It's now 16 minutes to the 9 o'clock hour.
Sometimes we abuse women. Poor women. But a poor woman would watch her 5 children. She will watch the no good man. And she will watch the society around her. And she will make the best decisions. Some of those women, because they use the top side, you and me could be where we are today. If those women had behaved ignorantly like some of our leaders do, people like you and me would not be where we are today. They made sacrifices for us because they understood the environment around them. We have leaders who have no understanding of the magnitude of what is before us. They quote figures of 40% unemployment, but they don't appreciate and understand what that means in material terms, in spiritual terms, what it does to poor people. They can quote it in parliament, but they don't understand what it is when a woman cannot feed her children, or when a man goes out to work and he comes home and he doesn't have enough money to do the basic things for his family. If you understand that, you will get off your nonsense about resigning from Parliament and take me until March. How long must we wait? That's what Dr. King asked those businessmen in Montgomery who tell him, wait, white people have given enough. Slow down, Dr. King. And he took up the newspaper and he wrote on the edges, wrote that sermon, which is now a book. How long must we wait? We must wait till March, because this is about Aubrey Norton. So they think it's not about those people who have been closed in their communities by the PPP and their agents. Even those people who have to go and stand up like enslaved people, begging for hampers as marauders come into our communities. If they think about those people, they will get on with the game. But it's about Aubrey Norton. That's the shallowness of our politics. I'm sick and tired of that. I've been around this nonsense for too long. People who can't understand the humanity of this whole business. They want to keep Aubrey Norton down and not realizing what they're doing to those people, those ordinary people who wake up every day, buy the planting, peel it, fry it, and go out on the road, knowing that for every bag of planted chip, they make $10, which can buy nothing for them. But they do it. And you are sitting there and talking about leader of list, and about Aubrey Norton, and about Harmon and so on. It's more than that. Every cow must cry for your own calf. At least the other side, even if it's crocodile tears, they're crying for their own calf. Who cries for us? Who cries for us?
Morning, neighbor, morning. Welcome to another program of BUXTONIAN Morning Time. It is 7 hours for the one. Who cries for us? Who cries for us? Is the question. Who cries for us? Who do we cry for? Plantation slavery. We unwillingly allowed others to climb upon our backs to get to greater heights. We were bullied into allowing others to climb on our backs to get to greater heights. Our plantation slavery is over. Emancipation came in 1834. Many of you will say it's 1838. Not going to spend time arguing that. When the proclamation was made and when the benefits were enjoyed. 1834 versus 1838. But emancipation came. Independence came, republic came. And different levels of freedom came. And the freedom of choice came. Adult suffrage came. They didn't come without a struggle. They all came with struggles. They came with struggles. And this generation enjoyed the freedoms, enjoyed the benefits of those struggles. But with those struggles came challenges also. And when we're supposed to be closing ranks and strategizing to deal with those struggles, with those challenges, it is a time when we are dividing ourselves. Dr. Hines has said a whole lot yesterday, from yesterday to today, quite frankly, because I saw him on Mark last night also. As we like to say, he was really fired up. Maybe yesterday was the day for him to onboarding himself. Right? But my point is, this is not a time when plantation slavery. This is not a time when we are enslaved, at least not in those methods, by the use of those methods during so many hundred years of enslavement. This is a time when we're supposed to be free thinkers, free men and women, enjoying the benefits of adult suffrage, one man, one vote. One individual, one vote. Let me not say man lest I be misinterpreted. Misinterpreted. Right? No. And so we have a duty, each and every one of us as citizens, to enlighten ourselves to the issues of the day and make decisions based on information, accurate information. That's a responsibility of ours. And so we have a duty to expose ourselves to learning, to teachings, so that we can learn. And we also have a duty to share that which we learned. And so we have a wider populace that is more aware, more educated to the issues of the day. I'm going to be throwing some bombs this morning, I believe. Where my thought process is going. I mean, let me let y'all into a secret. I generally don't sit and write about anything that I need to talk to my people about. I allow free thoughts, so my emotions take control. Right? And I'm feeling that people are going to get hurt this morning. Share the life. Share the life, share the life. Yes, I interrupted that thought process there. Share the life. Right? It's a burning shame. It's an insult to folks like myself. I'm doing my own horn here. Those of us who make the effort, those of us who sacrifice time, those of us who sacrifice income and so on and so forth, to do what we are doing here daily. It's an insult many mornings to see 600, 700 live viewers. And when you check the rate of share, you have less than 10% of people sharing the program. If it's good enough for you to listen, it's good enough for you to share. And if you're not sharing, it simply means that you're being selfish. You don't want others to be enlightened as you are. Enlightenment is what will give us the satisfaction that we're looking for, let's say. Enlightenment is what will give us the groundswell. Right? Enlightenment is what will bring us that groundswell. Michelle Kirk says that I'm freezing. You're freezing. Is anybody else experiencing that freezing issue? Because sometimes, depending on where we are, the internet acts differently. Right? So I'm saying when 600 persons are viewing live and you have less than 60 persons sharing, way less than 60 persons sharing, you ask yourself, what is it? Why these people can't find the time to click share? Is it because they don't want others to get the message? Or because they're not community oriented enough to recognize the importance of sharing? You see, we talk about wanting big numbers at protests. We talk about wanting a groundswell. We talk about wanting, I am going to say loosely here, 1 million persons on the streets of Guyana to protest against this misbehavior of the illegitimately installed government. Many were arguing that installed, Zacchaeus is one of the persons who constantly call and say install is just a word to mean that the persons were placed in office after winning. So the U.S. aid again, it was first the U.S. State Department which says the government was installed. Now U.S. aid is saying that the government is installed and the opposition should have a part to play with the government to manage the resources of this country. Right? We need to help to Facebook limits your friends when sharing. Yes. Facebook limits your friends when sharing. But are we saying that you can't share to 2 persons? Is that what we're saying? I'm trying to do the math here, right? Because they say each one teach one. So if I'm seeing 600 persons on, let me assume that some of those 600 persons would have shared. Let me do it like this. Let's say we had 300 live viewers. Each of you share to 1 and assume everybody accepts. Then we have 600 live viewers now. But that 300 which was shared to will now share to 300 more. We're supposed to get about 900 viewers. Y'all got me? So, yes, Facebook limits your friends when you're sharing. But not to less than 10%, 5%, 4%, right? Lacha Mahabi, where are you coming from now? We shared a link to the report yesterday. Right? I shared a link yesterday on the live chat. We shared it. Lacha Mahabi, you can go look for it yourself. It's called a DRG. USAID DRG 2021. August 2021 to be exact. Right? I ain't feeling too energetic this morning, so I ain't going to look for nothing for you. Sorry. Right? Good. Pamela says share to groups. Share to WhatsApp. Right? Let's share, let's share. That's how you get the message out. That's what we have to do. Good. But I'm saying that we are in this era free thinkers. We have freedom of choice. Oh, before I go here, I was saying, all right, we are free thinkers. We have freedom of choice. We have to, right? We have to be enlightened to make decisions. Good? But many of us who have access to social media, instead of seeking enlightenment on social media, we seek comedy. I said I was going to hurt some people's feelings. Right? We seek comedy. So when you can be in a virtual classroom like this one, this is a political class. KAMS is a political university. Right? When you can be in a virtual classroom enlightening yourself, you're then looking at comedy. And so instead of being aware of the issues, you could tell what the latest TikTok video is. You can tell what is the latest outlandish statement made on another social media show that is more comical than anything else. Right? But how does that empower you? It doesn't. I'll tell you what it does. It gives you a false sense of hope. A false sense of being comfortable. Good? There's what we call I'm trying to remember the exact term that we usually use. But let me explain it, so don't worry the term. Governments who are oppressing their people generally gives them a false sense of happiness and comfort and so on by giving them fit. Right? So when you should be sitting and be thinking and getting aggravated by the oppression coming from your government, they give you a false sense of happiness by giving you fit. In the previous PPP administration, every weekend there was a fit, and it's not happening right now, perhaps only because of the pandemic. You notice the curfew has been lifted, and so you're going to see a lot more fit happening. Because when you are fitting, you're not focusing on the hardships that you're faced with on a day-to-day basis. Right? They give you fit at a low cost. You get the popular artists coming. In the past, it used to be Jam Zone, Guyana Carnival, something a water fit. Right? Those were the things which were used to distract you from your hardships. Now, there are other things in the pandemic which are being used to distract you from your hardship. Social media, comedy, TikTok. You're TikToking every day. Caricature, people dressing up as all kinds of things. Right? instead of you being made to focus on your bread and butter issues and what are the extremities to which this government is going to oppress you, you're caught up in comedy. And I dare say, I know I'm going to mash some toes this morning, that many of us who should be highlighting this and enlightening our people to the oppressiveness of the nature of this illegitimate government are contributing to that distraction. Many of us. Right? Many of us are making it look like we are in a rat race. Who can score more points than whom? That is what the race is about. Who could score more points than whom? Who could be more popular than whom? Who could host more shows on social media than whom? Who could get more followers than who? Instead of us all sitting and, like David Hines said yesterday, strategizing. How are we going to get a message out there to our people? How effective is it? What impact are we making? If it is, we have to compete for the same space to get a message out. I argued for several months ago last year. I said it, and perhaps I'm going to repeat it. One of my biggest disappointment was the way in which the AP and UFC coalition, whatever you want to call it, the opposition in general, was handling PR work. My biggest disappointment. Because here it is, you had what I call a coalition TV. But while you had a coalition TV, every member of parliament had their own live show. Right? Every member of parliament had their own live show. And there was no cohesion, and perhaps still is no cohesion, in addressing the issues of the day. So everybody becomes a distraction to each other. And it comes across as one big comedy show, everybody jostling for space. Everybody jostling for space. And so when one set of people are trying to enlighten the flock, Carter Forbes, I'm very sorry, I won't be logging out to start over, I might never get started again. When one set of people are trying to enlighten the flock, another set of people are distracting them with I don't want to call it crap, right? But with flack. Just dealing with things and the topical issues. So when you leave there, you have more questions than answers. You don't have a deeper understanding of what is happening. And we have to deal with that. We have to deal with it. Because we have to be more enlightened if we are going to win this fight for our survival. And I'm saying it is for our survival. It is survival, first and foremost, of that political organization or that political grouping which represents almost 50% of the populace of this country. And like it or lump it, the major player in the representation of almost 50% of the people in this country is the PNC. So if we are going to fight for and ensure the survival of the PNC, we have to be more enlightened and we have to act more enlightened. We're talking coalition politics. Coalition politics is the thing right now to save this country, to save a large percentage of the oppressed in this country. But unless the PNC survives, coalition politics is not likely to succeed. That's my impression. Right? That's my impression. And so it's important that we be enlightened to be able to help the PNC to survive. Vibrant White says he disagrees with most of what I'm saying. A lot of it should be directed to the majority youths. Vibrant White. Part of the disintegration of this society, part of the failure of our political strategy is because of the failure of the older heads. I can tell you, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that a lot of the young MPs who are on the opposition side in the early days of being MPs were raring and willing to fight. But the older heads prevented it. And the older heads are perhaps still preventing it. Okay? Granger is not a youth man. Harman is not a youth man. Amnali is not a lil gal. Vala Lawrence is not a lil gal. A lot of the conundrum we are in right now, where the coalition, the opposition, were created by all the folks. The lack of political intuition, political sense by a large portion of our youth population is because of the failings of the adults. We did not groom them politically from they were a child. You all understand what I'm saying? So yes, all the folks, we old people, we big people, like pull ourselves out and say, them young people in their own stupidness. But do we stop to think that our failures to properly socialize our youths is what results in their failings now? Let me make a wider statement in relation to that, because it comes back to the same thing. A lot of our young people are struggling and continue to struggle, and even struggling to adult economically. They live at ma and pa until they turn old and dead. Compared to people from the other ethnicities. Why? Apart from all the oppressive tactics and so on that we have to face. Why? Because we, the older folks, fail in many instances to give them the kind of guidance that they should get. Right? I'm going to mash some tools. When I look over at Annandale, I see young and young girls getting married at 17, 18, 19, 20, just out of school, they're getting married. Some of them getting taken out of school to get married. They're starting families young. There certainly will be challenges, no doubt. But when I look over in Buxton, I know Buxtonians don't take it personal because it's a countrywide analysis, but I'm using 2 neighboring villages to explain. I see women in their 30s, 40s, 50s still dating. They haven't settled as a family to build on anything. In black communities, when if a female decides to say, well, hey, or if a male decides to say, hey, to the parents here, I am 20 now, I'm ready to get married. Girl, where I'm with you. You're too young to marry. You're too young to marry. An opportunity for marriage might come, but like you ain't good. You're too young to marry. And then 25 comes, and you're too young to marry. And the next thing you know, time has passed you by, and you're left unmarried and still dating. And then society looks at you and says, she ain't there for nothing, he ain't there for nothing, time running out, and they ain't making no sense. They still live at Mampa. But Mampa, to a large extent, right? To a large extent, has contributed to that state of affair. The older heads have failed to inculcate the attitude right? The attitude. The attitudes that are necessary for this thing. Right. And it's the same in our politics. Many of us tell our children, and I'm going to... many of us tell our children, politics is a nasty game. Don't get involved in that. But guess what? If every person is told that politics is nasty and they mustn't get involved, and every educated person is socialized to think that he or she doesn't have a place in politics, okay? What becomes of the political structure, which is what really controls the resources of the country? It is left to people who are uneducated. It is left to hustlers. It is left to people without integrity. And so you have a, the other word will come to my mind, a messed up political system to deal with. And that is what we're faced with in this country. The average educated black man will tell you that he wants nothing to do with politics. I looking after me own. I gonna make it. Me gonna get politics is stupidness. Right? That's what we will hear. But you check. You check. The other people are grooming from a young age. They are grooming their offspring to rule and control over us. They're teaching them from young. Them black man lazy, they not like work. Them black man hand to mouth. And we can't get a black man for do what we want. Right? We will hold each other's hand. That is what they do. That is what they do. And we're seeing it in government, but we're not even recognizing it. Let me compare and contrast again. A lot of us argue, or a lot of people argue. Yes, a lot of African youths don't want to listen about politics because we wait until too late to introduce them to the importance of politics. Like we argue, they argue, right? A lot of people say, black man I like farm, them youths ain't like farm, but I also argue that a lot of young people refuse to go to the farmlands because when they look around them, all the farmers they see are poor people. There are no outstanding examples in their communities of farming making you rich. But when you look at the other communities, you see farmers driving Prado, Tundra, the top of the line motor vehicle, and you ask yourself, why are them coolie people who farming get big fancy house? And when I look at my community, farmer is a man with tattered clothes, a old house. Why? And so we blame them, they want farm. But the question is, have they seen the examples that suggest to them that farming could be a success story? Right? It is young, it is all the folks like myself who have to hold the hands of our young people and lead them along the way. There very older people will talk about how their parents used to hold their hands as little children and take them to political meetings in the days of Walter Rodney and Barnum and U.C. Quine and Jagan, for example. Are we now doing that? Are we now doing that? No. We might first take them to a bacchanal. Right? So don't say that the young people ain't got interest in the young people. We as adults have to guide our youths. And it is when we as adults fail, we find ourselves in this conundrum. The division in the PNC right now, you think that division is fueled by young people? It's not. It is fueled by adults, all the folks who I want to consider the old guard. Unruly part, I don't care what they're farming. I'm just using the example to show the difference. Black people can't farm ganja. Oh, listen, how is it? The other people can farm ganja in their community and make a success out of it. Let's argue that. To buy all these high-end vehicles and houses and so on. And we can't do it in our black communities. You know why? Because they have insulated themselves. They watch each other's back, even if they don't like each other. But in our own communities, our hatred and division goes so far that we will do everything to watch each other fail. That is what is happening in the PNC. So a lot of these things which I'm talking about on a micro level, you can actually find happening on a macro level. I did plant two ganja plant in Buxton Bagam because I recognize there's a market for it. Somebody gonna come out and whisper into the other, hey, the one Amsterdam got enough ganja down there. And another gonna whisper to another, and then he gonna get to the authorities, and next thing you know, the whole ganja farm burning down. Right? But you go in that bush boulder, and in some of the canals, and you got, they got acres upon acres of ganja. And nobody ain't talking. Because guess what? When they see one of them planting ganja and making it, another 100 of them will join them and plant ganja and make it. They ain't gonna talk. And so everybody got to keep each other's secret. Right? Everybody got to keep each other's secret. And when they come upon a secret to success, once they set up themselves for success, they bring others along. They bring others along. Why you think in certain business, you could only see a certain set of people involved? On certain construction sites, you will only see a set of people. When you see a black man on certain construction site, he is doing the hardest work. He's a laborer. And when the hard work done, the black man gets puts off of the work site. Hey, we ain't gonna work for you, why? Because you could only be a mule. Those are the things we got to analyze. The older folks are responsible for socializing our young people, to make them leaders and make success stories. Don't let us just blame the young people if we don't give them the tool. I sit here so often and I refer to what I consider the success of my eldest child. It didn't happen overnight. He was groomed for success, if I can call it that. When he was a secondary school child, he couldn't be up, for example, watching television past 9, except on a weekend. He couldn't come home with property from school that didn't belong to him, unless he could give an explanation why. As he got older, he was brought into the realm of certain things, like running a business, managing a business. I had my son doing banking for me as a third, fourth, fifth farmer, which means anywhere between the age of 15 and 17. He had to take my money to the bank and go for it up until now. My son knows more of my financial business than his mother. Because he was groomed like that. He understands money management. And some of us just allow our children to run around. Spend how we get, broke how we got. At 11 years or so, I was teaching my son to drive. My daughter is now what, 15? She is driving. And I got one old vehicle. Sorry for calling it old. But I got one car. But I don't say, me ain't getting up in the car for they broke it up. Because I recognize we have to groom our children to be success stories. First and foremost, to continue from where we left off, to build on what we have built. And they can't do it unless we give them the tool. I got 2 children. If something were to happen to me, a vehicle is in the yard and they can't drive it, it puts me at further risk in cases of emergency. But if they could drive it, then they might be able to take me to get help in a timely manner. The same thing we're talking about with politics. If we groom our young people to take over because they understand the political system, then they can lead and lead comfortably when us old boys have to step back. And some people believe stepping back is bad, but a lot of us can step back and form councils or counselors for the younger ones to lead. And so they know that when they come upon a difficult turn in the road, they have a group of seniors who they can turn to for guidance. But in the PNC is a whole big, fight up. Old people stymieing young people. And quite frankly, in this instance, it's I don't know. Right? But it takes love of self to recognize when you're doing harm to yourself. As Novella says, no succession planning. Well, up to now, the issue of leader of the opposition was being ventilated for so long. Why up to now we can't get a leader of the opposition since Armand's replacement? When Armand resigned from General Secretary of the APNU, they asked him to stay on for 7 days to find a replacement. That was an issue that was being ventilated. It was always a possibility. You're saying that you never thought of who will be a good replacement for Harman? 7 days have passed. Have we heard that Harman is finally gone as General Secretary of the APNU? Have we heard an announcement of who the new General Secretary is? No. We heard a magnanimous speech made in Parliament by Dr. the Honorable Nicolette Henry about resigning her position and so on. Right? But lo and behold, when the letter was to follow, one would have expected that you made this magnanimous speech 24 hours after the letter will follow. Up until now, when we do heard that a letter was sent to the Parliament, if it were sent, the resignation will take effect at the end of March. Come on! You're blowing hot and you're blowing cold. As a lot of people say, you're playing hold me, loose me. And if you play hold me, loose me, then you have me in uncertain territories. I'm not certain. I don't know if to move forward. I don't know if to go backward. I am stagnated. And so just as how the political leadership, the political organization in the form of the opposition is stagnated, is confused about moving forward, so too are the followers. So too are the followers. Who influenced that decision of Nicolette Henry to say the resignation will take effect at the end of March? Is there a standing order in Parliament, for example, that says that you have to give a month, 2 months notice before you can leave the chambers? Or you can just submit your resignation and move on? Let our political leaders and elders explain that. Or is it somebody said to Nicolette, hey, stress them out a little more. Keep Aubrey out in the cold a little longer. By the end of March, the budget would have been debated, it would have been passed, spending would have started happening. And so you could resign then, because Aubrey wouldn't be a spoke in the wheel. I'm just being the devil's advocate if you want to see. Right? A lot of the issues we are faced with in this political conundrum are as a result of the failings of our elders. Why the young people want to hear about politics in black communities? Because they see the senior black politicians as self-serving. Many of the youngsters who made a wire not but Granger, when that man trying to get into power, every day they used to name Buxton. When Granger turned president, he come to Buxton 2 times. And both times, one he went to the gas station at the friend, and the next time he went down Company Road at the friend. He never came to Buxton to meet the public like he did before. We wire nothing like from them. That's their position. What we have to do, what the current crop of political leaders have to do, is go and sit with them and break that barrier down. Break that barrier down. But even instead of doing that, right? Even instead of doing that, the young politicos, the young leaders in the opposition are caught up in the power struggle of the elders, not making time to go into their constituencies and work or talk to them. Right? And jostling each other for space on social media because they believe that that is the only frontier that this battle could be fought on. Let us reorient our minds. Let us see things from different perspective. Let us bring our thought processes together. Strategize together. This is the way I envisage it. And people, I want you to judge me on my actions. I want you to judge me on my actions. When I started this platform, APNU TV was already up and running. And we had a cross-posting arrangement after I started. Originally, my program time was from 7 to 8 or something like that, or 6 to 7. APNU TV used to come on from 7. I'm trying to remember the timeline, but let's just use it as an example. My program used to start before and end before. My program used to start end 1 hour before APNU TV came online. Every morning. Some people like what I was saying because I was discussing, analyzing, and so on. We entered into a cross-posting arrangement. This is how we will do it. When you come on in the morning, you will cross-post to APNU TV. And so APNU TV will come on air online 1 hour before we were doing before. And so the end of your program will see the beginning of APNU TV first morning program. That is how I ended up in this 6 o'clock timeline. Right? That is how I ended up in the 6 o'clock timeline. Because in the first instance, I chose my timing to not interfere, not impede on APNU TV's time. Right? That is how it was. And so we had a smooth transition from BUXTONIAN morning time into APNU TV, whatever the program was called in the morning. And we had a cross-posting. Mark Benstrop Radio was a part of that cross-posting too. So when viewers decided that we were going to look at something in the morning, you had a whole continuous block of time covered by BUXTONIAN morning time, APNU TV, Mark Benstrop straight up, and whatever. Right? Nobody was competing with for audience. And so people had the opportunity to hear all that was being said on BUXTONIAN morning time, all that was being said on APNU TV, all that was being said on Benstrop Radio at nights and so on. So you had a preponderance of ideas that people had to toy with. But there came a time when BUXTONIAN morning time became critical of the former presidents and their lackadaisical attitude and what they left the Guyanese black people especially to face with the PPP and so on. And somebody didn't like that. And they stopped the cross-posting arrangement. I couldn't cross-post to their page. They could have cross-posted to mine. And as old people say, yeah, you hear me, after I realize this is what is happening, I stopped the cross-posting arrangement. If I can't come into your yard, why are you coming into mine? Why would I allow you to come into mine? And so we stopped the cross-posting. And everybody is fighting for space. Everybody wants to have an overlapping program and all of that. Because there's so many MPs and there are only so many viewing hours. Or prime time viewing hours. And so you got this whole competition thing, if you want to call it that. I am not the guilty one. As far as I know, I will never be the guilty one. This is my time slot. This is where I will stay. This is my niche. This is what I selected and worked and built. I will stay here. But like I said, judge me on my actions. Recently, I was approached by Mark. Mr. Amsterdam, I think we should cross-post. I ain't got no problem cross-posting. Let's do it. And now that I'm talking about it, we got 26 minutes to program time. Because Mark starts in 26 minutes. So y'all want to call, right? But allow me to teach and share right now. Right? I am now cross-posting with Mark. Is it likely that I'm going to have a cross-posting arrangement with the APNU TV? Possibly. If I'm approached, yes. Because I recognize each of us has something to contribute to this struggle. And so we should be each given the opportunity to contribute to the struggle, not fight each other, struggle against each other for audience and time. Like somebody said, when everybody is overlapping and fighting in the same time slot, viewers are forced to choose. What do I listen to? And so people are missing the message, important message on some platforms. Because they might not like my face, but my message might be important. Sharon might be more good looking than me, so they go to admire Sharon. But sometimes Sharon's message might be least important compared to what I'm discussing. We have to put our heads and hearts together and work it out. Just as the PNC has to put its heads and hearts together to work it out, the leadership there, so that we do justice to the people who depend on us. That's my message to you this morning. I have a lot more to say, but like I said, I just realized that we ain't got much time before Mark comes on. And I'll be monitoring Mark. I don't think I will just allow him to cross post on my page. Because if I see there is no reciprocity, I will disconnect the relationship. You all know what I'm saying? I ain't no damn fool. This is not plantation slavery, where you're forced to let others ride on your back to get to higher heights. We must ride together. We must hold each other's hand and pull each other along. If you can't do that, then I don't know if you're worth the people's time. The lines are open. 6225933 is the number to call. Leighton Charles says, Kiraki, you're saying these things to add more strength to the Jagabats and trenches. These are the things that the Jagabats pouncing upon to cry out disunity, to have breaking ranks in the opposition. I am saying these things to educate. Unless you can pinpoint where your malady is, you can't fix it. The only way you go to the doctor is if you recognize you have a sick. The only way you accept the medicine is if the doctor tells you what it is for. Right? So people might see it as adding fuel to the Jagabats. I see it as enlightenment so that people can get their act together. I don't know. Call it live, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Kedaki. I didn't understand this cross programming. So now when Mark come on, they mean the people are like me and other contributors, oral contributors will be losing our time to contribute. Your program is the only program where we could come in and call and give our views on the program. All the other rest of the program is like when you go to school. Teaching up on the chalkboard, teaching all the time. You can't get to air your views. Now with Mark had his show in the night. First it was things from 8 to 9. And when it is in the winter time, when they lose the hour, they would go back. Eventually, Sherrod was end up in that slot, but Mark put it about 10 later so that Sherrod could get the time. But Mark, when people go on his program and try to air their things, the topics, the points, or the thoughts or comments, whatsoever, and he don't like what you said, he does make certain he block you. So I, like me, I was being blocked from Mark's show. And when you see the time come, say he started, I stay and you show till it end. Soon as he come out, you know I do, I switch and off me food because I ain't gonna watch Mark. That's me comment later, Baba.
To each his own. The lines remain on 6225933 is the number to call. Right? 6225933 is the number to call. And yes, the viewer has a genuine concern. Will I be cutting your time to comment? No. It has happened now because I am now adjusting. But it simply means that I will have to cut some of the pre-recorded programming so that I can have enough time to do the live segment and you can have enough time to call. I have to readjust my programming. That's all. Call you live, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Amsterdam. You know what? I don't care who comes on. The same time when you come on, I know who I want to watch. Okay? Also, when it comes to Mark doesn't allow people to comment. So, because of that, I don't even watch. And even if I watch Mark, I don't share. And I think it's people's responsibility. If they think they can learn something, It doesn't matter who is coming on at the same time. They should tune in to where they can learn. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. I know Mark is listening, so I hope he will take constructive criticism. Voice note.
Good morning, Mr. Kidaki. Mr. Kidaki, you know what I have to say this morning? I don't know what is going on in the PNC scam. Well, let me tell you something. It is not doing well for our people, the supporters of the new government. It is not doing well for no one. And I am saying they've already, these people realize the nonsense that they're doing and what they're putting their supporters through, and stop with the nonsense. It would be better. Because what you're saying is true. You're hearing nothing about the handover of whatever position and all these kinds of things. We put those people there. Those people are not there by accident or by somebody and pick them or whatever. Mr. David Granger got, and he said he sent some letter to the speaker. But I am saying no one know the contents of the letter. You understand? No one know the contents of the letter. And why, if Miss Nicolette Henry resign as a parliamentarian, why she gotta wait until March? What madness is this in this country? What these people feel? They are there because somebody loves them. People vote put them there, and people vote could take them out from there. Thank you.
Good point by the voice note. The head of the list, the leader of the list, the representative of the list sent a letter to the Speaker of the House or to the National Assembly. But this representative of the list is representative of a constituent. Our set of people, about 217,000. And he has not made the contents of the letter known to these very people he represents. It is as if he is representing himself in this letter. These are things that we must demand knowledge about. Caller, your life, good morning.
Well, now you're talking. Good morning, everyone, and good morning, Mr. Kadaki. Good morning, everyone in the diaspora. You know, you're on the bullseye. You can't get no closer to target. Participation, inclusion. I'm glad the lady who just called raised the disconnect. She is voting, but she is feel as though she is being disenfranchised. That is the status quo of politicians. That is the behavior. I take your vote and go and see you later. You hear us at Granger come to box and see friend at the gas station? People in the Borbies can't see them. There's a disconnect. And I hope Armand is listening, because he is a proper member of the Granger team. They all belong to the same party. People keep telling you over and over it's a disconnect, but I'm glad people are waking up to that, and I'm glad Kadaki sung the horn. You can't take my vote and don't represent me. Granger and Aubrey Norton and Harmon on the same manifesto, PNC manifesto. But how come everybody ascribed to the same manifesto, but Granger doing something different? Harmon doing something different, and they both doing something different to Aubrey Norton. But you're on the same manifesto? How can people be diametrically opposed on the same manifesto on a national agenda? But that is the disconnect amongst themselves, and so if they got a disconnect amongst themselves, you know they don't care nothing about us. And that's the attitude. I take your vote and gone, like you know. We don't represent people, we represent party. And we represent your own self-interest. Anyway, I got a whole lot of stuff I want to talk about. I ain't going to take much time. Power sharing.
Caller, you have to be quick. Others need to use this time too. Good.
Thank you. Power sharing. Let me touch on an issue. Some call show hosts want to be representing people but don't want people to call in. Rhonda Lane said it right. You want to represent people, but people can't call in. When you don't like people's views, you're blocking them. You see? She's right to point that out. You can't want to represent people on a social media, but can't nobody call in. So who are you representing? Where is the participation in the people? I thought this is about we the people. I thought you were giving a platform for the people's voice. But all we're hearing is your voice, not the people's voice. So you don't have no call-in aspect to your show, but you want to cross-link. Open up your lines if you want to have participatorial democracy. Because that is what it's all about. It's not about you. It's about we in this democratic process. I know you might not like it what I got to say, but if you want to represent people, you have to hear the people, like BUXTONIAN is doing. And I ain't even getting to my program. Quickly. A referendum on power sharing. Maybe we can use this time to educate the populace while we educate them about GCOM and all these other issues that are relevant. We can use this time to educate the people why it's necessary to run a referendum. There is a double majority. You can have a majority in parliament. Do you know, ladies and gentlemen, that there is a majority on the street? Public opinion and public majority. And if you run a referendum, that the public majority can be more than the majority in parliament. We've got 217,000 people who voted for the coalition. If we run a referendum and we say we want to change the majoritarianism of the Constitution, whereby a one-seat leader could take all. We want to change that element in the Constitution. So guess what? After we run a referendum and change that, by the people's vote in the referendum, that means we have power sharing at the executive level. And also make sure that there are other laws that address power sharing in other subordinate lower agencies of the government. In America, one of the greatest fights in America was about the North and the South. It still is the greatest fight. We saw
I need to wrap up.
Trump. Okay, the North and the South. They had to address power sharing. And in the American government, power sharing is addressed between the vice president and the president. They're not all from the same eastern country, north, some are from the south. America has an issue of north and south, so they divide up amongst the vice president and the president. We need to divide up how power is allocated and shared at the executive level, in parliament, how it's structured. That a referendum can do and should move to do, and we should use this time to educate the populace, Aubrey Norton, on how we can bring, how we have a need for that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for calling. The lines are open. 6225933 is the number to call. We have a voice note.
Good morning, my brother, and good morning, listeners. I want to see what they're going to do for March coming up. March coming up just now, so I want to see what they're going to do.
The lines are open. 6225933 is the number to call. Oh, Ben, stop that calling. You can call back. We always value your 2 cents, as we say.
Mr. Kadaki. I think instead of people calling in and complaining about Granger,
call all the line.
Aubrey Norton and all these stuff, they need to go and protest in front of Congress Place. Y'all go and protest and let them know that it's y'all put them there. And let them give Mr. Aubrey Norton a chance. Y'all need to go and protest.
Call your live. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Kadaki. I don't know what to say because I think they need to come together and do a power sharing because this madness will continue and the young people will continue to suffer. And like some people are realizing that this struggle is for real. Now, Mr. Granger, what he held Mr. Granger is still holding on to power for. This man's at the whole period I tried to say, you know, because Why don't he just hand over everything to Mr. Norton? He said he resigned from the list or what it is maybe. Why don't you hand over the thing to Mr. Norton? You know, but they have some bickering and things, but these people is so disgraceful, you know, and the people have the nation at ransom with the wickedness, and he called himself a churchman. I wonder what church this man's going. No church person don't behave like how he's behaving. He do his nonsense. Give somebody else a chance and go and relax yourself.
Thank you, caller. Point taken.
Why are you still holding on and doing a sort of nonsense?
Point taken, caller. Point taken. Thank you.
Exactly, good. Thank you.
All right, it's 9 minutes to 9 o'clock, and we have to cross post with Mark. So I'm going to try to wrap it up anytime around now. We're going to go as close as 4 or 5 minutes. But Bench Cup most likely has to say something. He's calling.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, Mark. Morning.
This is Bensha. I don't know what's the issue with individuals who feel that every talk show, whether in social media or whatever, that there has to be a call-in section for them to call in. And if they don't call in to air their views, as some of them love to do every morning, whether on lunch or whomever show, they have that right. But a call-in or a talk show doesn't have to open the line every day. My format is different from BUXTONIAN. Expected other people have a different format. Whenever I open the line, people are called. So what do? I continue with my format. I run a radio talk show, not a Facebook talk show. This is not to take away or discredit others who do that. But we have a format at the radio station of which we stick to. Now, people who come with a different view are not blocked if they're respectful in their contents. When people come and they curse and they go on and they are disrespectful, they are disallowed. And who don't like it? Well, I have absolutely no apologies for that. If somebody comes and they curse up and they misbehave, Benchap Radio platform is not a platform for that. If they are tolerated with that on other platforms, fair enough, they can go there. That's my point. The other point, I think you made something, or somebody made a point about David Granger writing to the speaker, and they don't know what the content of the letter is, and so forth. Now, as leader of the list, any leader of the list, whether it is David Granger or not, they have a bound duty to send a letter to the Speaker of the National Assembly to say that X, Y, or Z persons have resigned their seat from the National Assembly, and he, David Granger, has accepted that that resignation, and a replacement either is made immediately or a letter of replacement will be sent shortly. It is as simple as that. I don't know why people feel that they ought to be as emotional as they are. And every single day, cost, Granger, cost, Granger. But I don't know if it makes them feel happy. But if it makes them feel happy, let them continue to do that. Meanwhile, they're talking about unity and unity and unity. Every morning, that is what they do. Cuss out each other. The energy that they use to cuss out each other in their own party, let them use that to go down at the Marriott there to protest what the PPP is doing. Let them use the same energy out there and protest the atrocities of the PPP regime instead of every morning or every day looking forward to only airing their view via phone calls or comments and so forth. Let them use that energy to go after the PPP. Thank you so much.
Before you go, Mark, let me ask you one question.
Sure, sir.
Is it a right of supporters to know what their representatives are doing? For example, do citizens have a right to know what the contents of that letter is that was sent to the speaker?
I think it's an obligation for party leaders to let their constituency know that this is what we are doing and this is our next move. But I don't believe that every single thing that is discussed, that the party got to know, the membership got to know the contents of everything. For example, Mr. Aubrey Norton met with diplomat. Should Mr. Aubrey Norton come out and say what the discussions, all of the discussions surrounding his meeting or courtesy call with the U.S. ambassador is, or the EU ambassador? There are some things that are not supposed to be discussed publicly. However, I agree with you. Important matters to the constituency ought to be relayed in some way or the other. In the case of what's happening in Parliament, of course, it should be the party leader should know, yes, Mr. Granger wrote to the Speaker to accept the resignation of Nicolette Henry, who I believe should not wait until March to resign. It should begin with immediate effect. Some sort of explanation, and not necessarily full contents, but at least some form of explanation, I think is necessary.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. And I'm now signing off so we can cross post. Have a great day, sir.
The person who spoke about Harman and others being in a manifesto, people don't go in a manifesto. A manifesto is basically to outline the party's policies and promises during the course of an election.
Mark, it's time for the next program.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Good.
Okay, and that's a wrap for us. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow is Friday, you know, Loose Talk Friday. Hey, we're going to continue this kind of discussion tomorrow. Don't fret yourself. I hope I can give you more time.